It is May 13th, 2025. The Board of Commissioners of the Hardwick Electric Department is meeting. It is 8:14 a.m. This is a special meeting. At least I think it is. We'll come to that in a minute. All commissioners except for Commissioner Prevost are in attendance, as is General Manager Brace. Was this announced on the radio anyplace?
It was posted in all the public places and posted on our website.
Yeah, but that's not enough to constitute notice for a meeting. It needs to be on radio or newspaper.
Okay. So I guess this is not a meeting.
So whatever we do, we're going to need to, well, there's a potential fine for having a meeting that isn't properly, I don't know what to do. I certainly don't feel like paying a $500 fine if you knowingly have a meeting that hasn't been properly warned.
My understanding is that Beth had sent it out and put it into whatever normal channels. However, I don't know that it was warned on the radio. So
Well, maybe she do. I just got something from Roger. Let me just reply. Zoom isn't working. It's the earlier Teams link. Okay, maybe Roger may be joining. He was just asking if it was the 20th or today. So, as an aside, I think if this meeting is scheduled for a different date, it won't open on Zoom.
this is the one that I just forwarded out. It was just the same link that we always use.
Right, but that's a link that's set up scheduled for a meeting on the 20th. That's what it said when you go into the link at 6 p.m. And I think that might have been why people couldn't get into it.
Okay. He's in the waiting room now.
Okay. I think the only agenda item is the RFQ for the work at Wolcott Hydro.
There was a second for the auditor engagement letter.
I'm sorry?
There was a second agenda item also for the auditor to execute the engagement letter. If we can get that on there.
Well, that's going to come off the agenda, I think, because I certainly didn't see that and I haven't reviewed the letter. I don't know whether other people have reviewed the letter, and there have been times when there were issues with the auditor's letter.
I don't think the auditor's letter was attached.
It was attached yesterday.
Was it?
I didn't see that email until this morning. I had checked my email earlier yesterday, and there wasn't anything there, and I didn't get back onto my email again. Michael, have you reviewed the auditor's letter?
No, I thought I didn't see it as an attachment. Let me just go open it up again.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, I think that's going to have to be parked into unless listen. If others want to take it up today, that's fine.
Generally speaking, I think if at all possible, Sarah, a few more days of notice are going to be helpful to have us all prepped for these meetings.
Yeah, I had hoped to get that secured and locked down last week. Obviously, that did not happen.
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to park that, and we can take it up at the meeting next week, if everyone's on board about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Which takes us then to the FEMA feasibility studies and the proposals, which, Sarah, if I understand correctly from the little that I was able to look at this morning, the RFQ was amended.
It was amended only to clarify the issue that you raised, that the board raised at the last meeting, or last couple meetings, about a potential conflict of interest. So it was just to clarify that it was not a preclusion, or that there would be, because of the type of bid. And this is the qualification, so that was the only thing, and that was sent out prior to anyone actually submitting their RFQ bids.
But did people actually respond to that? I didn't see that in the RFQ responses by either party. I went through them again very quickly, but I didn't see them there. Did anyone, did you?
How do you mean, did I?
Did anybody say that they agree that they will not do the design build work?
The RFQ clarified that it was not, that was not going to be an issue because of the type of, there are two different types of bids after this feasibility study. It was acknowledged, and if you want that to be a part of any negotiations to make sure that we get a clear statement, we can do so.
It looked to me in one of them, I think it was the Du Bois schedule, that they had design at the end of their schedule, which sounds to me like they think that they would be doing that. I will tell you, I'm very confused about this. I found the whole RFQ confusing. I'm used to seeing bid documents that lay out how the response is supposed to come in so that you have apples and apples that you can compare. I found it difficult, I don't know about others, to compare the two responses.
Would it be helpful at this point for Sarah to provide us with a summary of where we've been and where we are and what we need to do today?
So in essence, this is the feasibility study required in order to proceed with any sort of design or engineering. This is meant to look through the three outstanding items for whether to do 2 or 1 penstock, to mitigate flood hazards, wet or dry proof for the building, and a structural analysis that has to occur. The actual full out design build is not at this stage. This is to determine whether it is feasible, cost and materials wise, to proceed with repairing and rebuilding Wolcott Hydro.
I certainly understood that to be the case.
Okay. That is what the board requested and what FEMA is requiring. As we mentioned, as of late last month, we have a new FEMA representative for the state of Vermont, who is very clearly pushing for progress to be shown and demonstrated for the 2023 and 2024, mostly 2023 flood mitigation efforts. And there is a risk, if we cannot demonstrate progress, to move forward, understanding the complexity of this specific project, of course, that they will close out the project without any funding. So that is why there is a push to move now and to proceed and select at least a firm for negotiations to perform the feasibility study, which itself is going to take 6 months. And that does not even move into the construction, design, or build phase. So the RFQ was released twice now. This is just the qualifications. First RFQ was released and pulled back. That was not going to be comprehensive enough to cover these 3 different elements of the project of the Wolcott Hydro mitigation and repair. So it was issued again, and we received those bids on the 24th and 25th. I believe it's the 25th. Received the bids from D&K, the 2 firms, and also Gomez and Sullivan. The consultant that we have that works with FEMA regularly had provided and suggested using the scoring matrix as a means to evaluate these firms, to select one for negotiations, not taking into consideration cost, because the cost is the next step of negotiations. And so this was just purely to evaluate the bids that we received on their qualifications to perform the work of a feasibility study, touching on those 3 components.
Great. And what's your recommended course at this point, Sarah?
My recommended course would be to, I mean, there were only 3 scores officially that came through on the evaluation. I would say to use the highest score of the weighted average as an initial first step in negotiations to try and work on the cost and not to exceed. And if we can negotiate down and also clarify and address any other concerns that the board has, then we can have a full agreement letter, scope and all of that for the board's review on May 20th, ideally, might be longer, so that we can execute and enter into that work and that the work can begin for the feasibility study as soon as possible.
So all we're trying to
That
do
makes
today
sense
is
to me.
select the guy to negotiate with.
Correct.
Okay.
Why did you rank one firm? Well, I guess one question that I had was I noticed, I thought the RFQ was asking for recommendation letters, but neither company put in letters. They gave you phone numbers and emails of people. Did you speak with the people with the references?
I have not spoken with the references yet. However, I looked through all of the projects and, you know, some of them are our neighboring utilities, sister utilities that have had projects done by both of these firms.
There
We
was one
have-
referee who showed up on both companies and you didn't speak with them. I don't understand how we ask for letters of reference and we get things and we haven't spoken with any of the people and then we make a decision without hearing what the experience has been
The
working with
understanding,
people.
go ahead. The understanding that I got from our consultant was once we have selected one, then there is a deeper dive into that process, both for contacting the references. It's not necessarily turning away the other firm. There's 2 firms, right? We're looking at 2 firms. So the process, as I envisioned it, as it was explained to me and suggested and recommended by our consultant, was to choose a firm to begin the negotiations, perform the reference checks, negotiate the price. Should we not reach any sort of resolution with that firm or cannot come to a common understanding and don't want to execute with them, then we can talk to the other firm. Because ultimately, I think both of them are equally qualified. And so for me, it comes down to timeline and cost. There's one firm that can do the work or has proposed to do the work on a faster timeline, which is where I would start.
I looked, the timelines looked essentially the same to me.
There was a 2 or 3 month difference between
There was a 1 month, there was maybe a 1 month difference. One said September and one said October for the feasibility study, if I read it correctly. But I guess I'm very confused by the process. I'm sorry. If both are equally qualified, I don't understand why there was a difference in the score that there was. I don't, what I found unusual was that the RFPs that I've been involved with, when there's a scoring approach, the people who are bidding are told what the scoring approach is.
Right.
And so that you can see what they're proposing in connection with that. And that was nowhere's in here. So there's a
So
scoring
Appendix
approach.
E of the RFQ does have the evaluation criteria and what those scores would be based on.
I'm sorry?
Evaluation criteria of the AE statement of qualifications are the 45 points, qualifications and experience of the engineering firm, location considerations and how it impacts meaning effective communication, knowledge and understanding of Hardwick Electric, and schedule.
That was it. That was in there. Sorry, then I missed that.
Yep. And that was exactly what was in the scoring criteria.
Yeah, no, I saw what was in the scoring. I did not see that in there, but
I don't
I
think.
just find the process odd that if we have 2 companies that are both equally qualified, that we don't negotiate with both of them on price and see who comes out better. But beyond that, I don't understand why we haven't checked references, especially when there's one referee who is local, who shows up on both to find out what their experience was with each one.
The other piece of it, I think, too, is the qualification and experience of the firm and who is assigned. So we have a not a principal engineer of one firm, and in the other firm we have the actual principal engineer is the one who's leading the project. That's the other piece of it. It's not just equally qualified; it's who they have actually assigned to lead the project for HED. And I think that's where there are very minute differences, but the month difference, who is assigned as the key project manager for Hardwick Electric, and then of course, there is a gap and difference in cost, so that's where we don't want to necessarily exclude the other firm, but I would rather try and negotiate down on one and establish clear guidelines and a not to exceed. One is based on hourly
So,
estimates,
so
an
you have looked
hourly.
at the financial proposal. I thought the financial proposals weren't supposed to be opened until after the bid selection. I'm just,
I'm trying to explain why why there is a desire to choose one firm to negotiate with.
I don't think we're committed to the filling out the table to select the best guy and following like a rigid way of getting from A to Z. In my experience, you get the proposal, you look at the qualifications, you talk to the people, even if it's only one, I usually do more than one. And basically, you have a discussion to see who you can work with. Because I think both firms could do the job. And yes, one firm is a little bit more senior than the other. Doesn't mean that the firm that's using the junior guy can't get it done. I think both firms look reasonable to me. And I think the way to make a decision is you talk to the guy. I'm a little concerned that one guy was hourly as opposed to lump sum, and the hourly guy had a lot of extras at the end with multiples of what their rates would be if they had to do it quicker, if they had to do some other work. It seemed like, there's a way for them to push a lot of money to the back of the project, which I'd like to kind of resolve. This project is pretty clear what has to be done. And I don't understand why people can't just come up with a lump sum number. When I did engineering work, people ask for a lump sum, you kind of figure it out and you go with it, and you live with what you do. And if you're wrong, you
and
can do the job. So I think both firms are good. One's a little more senior staff on it. But I don't think we have to say, all right, let's go back to the table and be really rigid about 45 points for this and 20 for that. It's almost more a gut feeling than anything else. And the only way you can get to that is to talk to somebody. So,
did you meet with these people? Was there a site visit?
We've worked with both of these firms throughout the process over the last several years and several, for decades. I think both firms have been in communication for various elements of the project. This is a specific component of the overall flood mitigation and repairs. So both firms we've worked with both of them. We've spoken with both of them. They both bid for the first round of RFQs. I think this is the reason why we use this evaluation criteria is specifically to make it cut and dry, black and white, and fit within the FEMA, process and the consultant's recommendation, so that it wouldn't be necessarily a gut feeling. It would be based solely on these metrics, so that we can choose one, move forward, and negotiate on the actual cost structure, right? And I think it's no small project. I agree that it's fairly cut and dry what has to be done, but it is the biggest step to actually moving towards rebuilding. And so I think that's why it was an attempt through the RFQ, through the process, to make it a quantitative analysis or evaluation.
So your recommendation is go with Du Bois, if that's how they pronounce it.
It would be my recommendation to see if they can come down to go with Du Bois and see if they can come down. That's personally, but it's not a one-person decision, right?
No, but we want to know what your recommendation is. You're the person who's going to be working with them.
I think Du Bois and King has been a little more responsive. I think having the senior person in place leading the project at Du Bois and King is valuable. And I think, we can time, experience, and ability are really and cost, of course, is a ladder, not something we should be considering at this moment. But I think those are the key pieces, and where this is an enormous project that is representative of over 10% of our power supply is I'm trying to get it moving as soon as we can. So the timing piece is really the underlying push for me. So yes, I would say Du Bois and King. But we can work with that.
Since I was the commissioner who said I was uncomfortable doing the matrix, just because I didn't have visibility to the criteria that were listed on the sheet, things like references. I like what you're proposing as an approach, is you'd like commissioners' support for you to engage with your preferred provider and try to work through the remaining issues. And I, for one, would be willing to endorse that as a next step. I think that fits with Mike. And Mike, your experience is probably some of the best here in terms of what's reasonable, what's normal, what should you expect from these kinds of engineering firms. And if it comports with your experience, Mike, and that's what Sarah wants to do, I'm all in. I mean, I'm fine with that, supporting her to do it.
Yeah,
I don't know, Lynn. I don't know, Lynn, how we formalize that now, but because it seems like it's
Right.
just moving to the next step. It's not so much the final decision. But I think what Sarah wants to know is if she goes to him and say, "Hey, you can have this. The we'll pick you if you reduce, if you do this, if you do that, if you come into line, and you're the preferred provider." She wants to make sure we're behind her in that. That would
And,
help her negotiate, it would seem.
yeah, no, I think it would be to, authorizing Sarah to proceed with negotiations over price. It's not just price, it's also contract terms.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm a little concerned, and that's going to need to be reviewed by council. And I'm not sure who we have for council for that kind of work. But that's something that can be, looked at. But yeah, I think it's just going forward with the next step. It's not authorizing to enter into a contract.
Sounds like
It's supporting Sarah on the preferred bidder.
Sarah, do you need help negotiating with these people? I think I saw that in your email.
I think once I get initial first steps with them and first conversations, I mean, I'll certainly be keeping everyone in the loop. And I think as we identify who the appropriate counsel would be, I mean, we've been leaning pretty heavily and getting the support of the consultant that we've had with FEMA, because they've been able to identify certain clauses that are crucial to the FEMA process to make sure that, we're not to exceed and all of the certain clauses and terms to make sure that it's FEMA reimbursable. So, I mean, those are some of the key pieces. And, I think we will, of course, we'll need help. And I could certainly reach out as we get first versions.
Well, I
And
think they
second
had a
versions.
version of their contract in their financial proposal.
Part of it, yes. Yeah.
Is there a motion?
I
make a
move.
motion.
No, you
No,
do
go
it,
ahead.
Mike. No, you're better at this. You do this.
I make a motion that we direct Sarah to start negotiations with a preferred provider, after which time she can come back to us with their final compensation package, and we can then decide whether or not that is the direction we want to go.
I second.
Any discussion? I would just like to amend the motion to make clear who the preferred provider is. Which, Sarah, that's what, Du Bois and King?
Yes.
Is there a second on that motion,
Second.
on the amendment? Okay, I think we have to vote on the amendment first. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Reno? Okay, so that's unanimous. And any discussion on the underlying motion? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Good luck, Sarah.
Sarah, let me just give you a quick anecdote, which is pretty interesting where we are. So I just did an RFQ a few weeks ago for a project in New York. Got 4 bids. They range from 3 million to 4 million. We threw out the $4 million guy. We had 3 bids on a $3 million job. They're all within 3% of each other. Sat down with the owner, decided who was our preferred person of the 3 people, brought that person in, went through the project with them, did VE, looked at everything they had included, didn't have included, be able to get the 3 million down to 2.6 million, which is substantial savings just by talking to people. Because a lot of times there's a misunderstanding of what their scope is. And we're actually kicking that job off tomorrow in New York. So, talking to these people is a big deal. A lot of people, and I looked at the way they did their cost proposal, which is they listed all the people and all the hours and all the tasks, which we used to do when we did a building. And when we did it that way, we ended up saying, wow, it's a lot of money compared to looking at similar jobs we've done. Because when you're doing hours by task, you're always rounding up and you end up with a very big number. And usually when someone says, okay, you're not the low guy, do you want the job? Here's the low number. You usually say, yeah, I'll do it for that number because you know that jobs don't always go the way you think they're going to go. And sometimes you have to go on experience of other jobs, what it took you to get to the end result. So I think if you talk to these people and if you need help, I'll be happy to help. We can get their number to something much closer to the other guy and button it down a little bit tighter and maybe get it as a lump sum because I think it's much better than hourly. Every hourly project I've seen, people reach the hour, the ultimate, the upset at some point because,
Weren't they the lump sum? They were the lump sum, weren't they?
no, I don't think so.
I thought so.
Or
I
are
th-
they?
I,
So
th-
there's a low price?
I thought they were lower. I thought they were the lump sum, but they had adders also. And their adders were actually higher. That was something to watch out for.
I appreciate that and appreciate the guidance and explanation too.
But Michael, you may be right. But I looked at the stuff very quickly. Is there any other business?
Nope.
Is there a motion to adjourn? And Sarah, thank you for your hard work on this.
I owe a lot of it to Beth, but thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a nice day, everybody.